Hello and welcome to the second chapter or episode of a discussion with former teachers at Black River High School. We'll each introduce ourselves and then we plan to share some memories with you from our days at Black River. And as it was mentioned by Stephanie in the first segment, this will then go to the Black River High School exhibit up in the museum, and you'll be able to come and watch and reminisce about your days at the school. I came to Black River in 1968, right out of UVM. I was actually heading to Europe with a friend, thought we'd bum around for a couple of months, got a call from the superintendent here in Ludlow about 2 days before school started that there was an opening. John Whittlak, who taught phys ed here for a long time, had originally been the social studies teacher for the junior high and the high school, and he moved over to the gym. So I came down, did the interview, and was here for 43 years. I wanted a small school anyway. I was a product of a high school of about 70 kids in grades 9 through 12, and I never wanted to teach in a big school. So this was ultimately the perfect place for me to be. Being in a school like this is like being in a family. And I always thought that was important. I taught social studies mainly in junior high and later in middle school when we transformed the junior high into a middle school, and also occasionally taught high school courses when there was a need. I remember teaching sociology one semester. I picked up a Vermont geography course one semester and then taught AP US history for a few years. So we can start this side.
My name is Connie Wilcox, and I started at Black River High School as a full-time substitute in March of 1978. And at that time, there was one music teacher that was teaching both in the high school and the Ludlow Elementary School, which was next door. And so I was fresh out of college. I graduated from Keene State College in '77. And was living in town, and this seemed to be a good fit for me. My student teaching had been in the Lebanon, New Hampshire area. I was doing high school choir there, and I was also in 3 different elementary schools, so it was an easy transition to come in. I think one of the things that most impressed me when I came to teach here was the experienced staff and all the friendly faces, because I really, even though I had a good student teaching experience, I was a very new and experienced teacher. So everyone was really helpful, and it was like Sue said, it was a family, and it was a very wonderful place to teach. I never left the position. I stayed here for 38 years, and I think that says a lot. I started to see second and even third generation of students in my teaching career here in Ludlow. So one of my really good memories is from the 1990s. At the time, Paul Rondinoni was the high school band director, and he also did all the instrumental lessons at the elementary school. And at that particular time, we had a wonderful synergy with drama and the art department, and things were just really cooking in the arts at Black River. We did a lot of collaborative work, and it was really a fun time to teach because there was a lot of talented young students at that time, and they were involved in the art department, they were involved in the music department, and also in the drama with Stephanie, and Bob Frappier, I think, was probably during a little bit of that time as well. So it was wonderful, wonderful time to be teaching at that period of Black River history. I think one of the other good memories that I have is collaborating with Chuck Bostock, and we were always working on baccalaureate together. And we did our rehearsals, and we got kids there, and we worked out the programs. So I was always the person that was coming in and adding a little music into something. I did things with Sue and some of the other teachers, so it was a very nice collaboration with fellow teachers.
Senor?
Yes, well, I'm Chuck Bostock, or Senor Bostock, or Senor. I went through different stages. When I first came to Black River in 1973, all the students were nice and respectful, of course, and called me Mr. Bostock. But then after about 10 years, they gave me my Spanish nickname of Chulo, because I made all my Spanish students take a Spanish nickname. And then my last 10 years, I was either Senor B or Senor. But I came here in 73, and as Stephanie said in that first segment, Stephanie and Joe and Tony and Stewie and myself, we all went through Black River High School as students. And I graduated, and then I had my 4 years in college and 2 years teaching in New Hampshire and 4 years in the Air Force, and I was getting out. And then in late May of that year, Paul Poland, who was principal, I was stationed in Alaska in the Air Force. Paul Poland called me up and said, "We just lost our Spanish teacher for next year. How would you like to come back to Black River and be a Spanish teacher?" And so I was very happy to do that. And I was here for 39 years. And I taught Spanish and English for the first 7 or 8 years, and then gave up the English and pastored the Baptist church, but I kept my Spanish. And then after about 10 years, I came back and taught Spanish full time. I coached boys basketball JV for 8, 9 years, and Dave Baker was doing varsity. And then I coached girls JV when Sue was varsity coach, I think for 3 years. And then I coached softball for 3 years. And one of my claims to fame is being the scorekeeper, announcer, timekeeper for soccer for 45 years. And the whole town would hear my voice over the loudspeaker. Sometimes they'd say, "Hey, we heard your voice the other day." But I just had a great time here. And I guess the things that I remember most are the extra things, like the junior proms, the fundraisers, the trips to Spain, the Spanish, the senior class trips, all that type of stuff, the winter carnivals and so forth. Connie mentioned working with baccalaureate and also working for graduation rehearsals. It was just a small school and an absolute joy to teach here, and I'm so thankful I had the opportunity, and so sad that Black River had to close. And one of the things is when I was teaching, I had to work under the secretary, and Anita was one of those. Anita.
What's that? I'm Anita Pickielnok, and I was school secretary for 26 years. I came here I became secretary in 1967, but I went through Black River like a lot of the others, from first grade right on up through. I'm the oddball because I didn't teach, but let me tell you, I was called in as substitute teach many times because I was in charge of calling the substitute teachers, and quite often they weren't available. So they'd say, "Okay, you go cover it, you go cover it." I had Paul Poland to start with as my principal, and he was also my senior homeroom teacher. So I had a hard time going from Mr. Poland to Paul. He was Mr. Poland for so many years, and then all of a sudden you're working for him and he says, "Call me Paul." And it took a long time for me to make that break, let me tell you. But I did, I guess my best experience at Black River was graduation. I attended 25 of the 26 graduations, got them ready. I had to order all the caps and gowns, I had to order class rings, I had to order all that stuff that goes with it and set it all up. I handled all the diplomas and I handled all the scholarships, and it was a busy, busy time, but I loved every minute of it. And I had kids had to come in and pick up their caps and gowns, I remember, and I used to tell them, make sure you get it ironed because you want to look nice. And I waited. 3 gowns had not been picked up the day of day of graduation. 7 o'clock in the morning, 3 boys come in. They'd come in to pick them up. I had taken them home the night before and ironed them to make sure that they got ironed, because I knew if they didn't pick them up that morning, they wouldn't be ironed. But those are some of the jobs that secretaries have to do. I don't think that I can recall too many times that I really was involved with kids, but most of it was, like I say, with the substituting. I did coach junior high basketball, girls basketball, 1 year. And it was the best thing I ever did. But thank God, I had one daughter that was also playing, and it made it good when I had any criticism to make. I'd use her as an example, and I'd say, Ann, you didn't do this, or you didn't do that. You got to do this. And she knew that I was using her as the example so that I didn't, make anyone else feel uncomfortable. But I had a great year that year. Really all I can add to it. If anybody has anything else, they can come up with it.
Well, I can start with some of the memories. In addition to teaching in the classroom, I did coach girls varsity basketball. I loved the game, had growing up, and it was a great experience. When I think of all the girls I dealt with over the years, many I still keep in contact with. It was a good experience. There were good athletes at Black River High School with the girls. And I got into coaching basketball because Jennifer had decided she had field hockey and softball and decided she would give up basketball. And she said to me, I heard you played in high school. How would you like to coach? So that was my introduction to it. Thank God I had a dad who, after every one of my game, would critique my performances and what I did right and wrong. So a lot of his lessons were used with my teams. I also advised National History Day, which we started with a hand-picked group of 8th graders. I think it was back in 1985, maybe. We heard about this program where students would spend a year researching some aspect in history related to a theme, like might be conflict and compromise, for example, would be a theme. And then they would present their work at the Vermont History Day contest. If they were able to place first or second with a superior rating, they would then get to go to the University of Maryland in June and participate in the national competition. Well, the 4 or 5 kids we handpicked to go came up with a project, won at the state level, and we went to Maryland that June. And after that, the program really took off. I started with just 8th graders, got a lot of high school kids coming back and saying, can we continue with History Day? And that went on until I retired. And that was a very enjoyable experience. I mean, a lot of in-depth learning, a lot of research, and unfortunately or fortunately, I run into kids today who participated in that, and they say, Mrs. P., the only history I really remember is what I did for History Day, which does make me feel good, but I know history is one of those subjects that as you age, I think it becomes more interesting and more relevant. Yeah. So those are some of the extracurricular things I did. I was thinking about academic experiences. I taught sociology for a couple of semesters, and it was all seniors. And we would talk a lot about the behavior of people in groups. And one day I was late coming back from the museum because they also had kids who would go up there and were involved in projects, and my class was gone. And we searched all over the school. I had no idea where they were. And they showed up at the end of the period. They had been to a student's house next door playing cards. And they sat down and they had a whole justification for what they had done. They were behaving as a group. They were examining each other's behavior in the group. They had stayed together. The list went on and on and on. And I didn't have the heart to even begin to discipline them. Their rationale showed they paid attention to what we were talking about in class. And I always think of that as one of my fondest memories when it came to academics. Someone else want to jump in?
Go ahead, Connie.
Well, actually, this has to do with you, Chuck. I think you should talk a little bit about all your trips with students to Spain, because as a parent of a student, I know that you took my son Matthew, and I know how much of an impact that had on him, and he's actually still practicing his Spanish.
I took 5 different groups to Spain for roughly a week each time, and we always had a small group. Never took fewer than 10 or more than 15. That way we were able to keep track of them. And when I see students in the grocery store now, 20 years after they got out of here, they don't want to talk about the future tense or the subjunctive mood or what to do with adjectives. They want to talk about a trip to Spain that they took, and that's what they remember. But we had some beautiful times. We saw some fantastic places in Spain, and almost every year there was always a little wrinkle. One year when Matthew was there, I think it was.
Yep.
Yeah. Of course, some of my boys on one of our tours met some girls from another school, and we all went back to our where we were staying, hotel together. And the next thing I knew, 2 of the boys were missing, and we didn't know where they were. Well, come to find out, they had done probably a nice thing. They escorted 2 of those visiting girls back to their hotel. The only problem was we didn't know it, so we didn't know where they were. Another year, one of the first things I did when I got to Madrid was I would show the students around and how to use the subway system, just in case they got lost. They could get back to the hotel. And one of the boys, of course, got hungry, and around 11 o'clock at night ran out to get some pizza. And all of a sudden somebody's knocking on my door and telling me, my roommate's gone and I don't know where he is. So we were a little concerned about that for a couple hours, but he came back with no trouble. Another year, a girl lost her passport just as we were ready to check in at the airport to come back home to Ludlow. She realized she didn't have her passport, and we looked all through her luggage, couldn't find it. And fortunately, I always get to the airport early, and we were able to get back to the hotel, find the passport, and get back before the plane took off. And then there was a time we were stuck in the Atlanta airport for over 24 hours when they kept delaying the flight and canceling and delaying. But through it all, those are just great trips. And if I had to choose probably 5 of my 10 favorite moments as a teacher, 5 of them would be those Spain trips. Mm-hmm. They were just super. Anita, secretary, what did you see?
What did I see? It isn't probably not really what you'd want to hear. But anyway, as a secretary, it's totally different than being a teacher. I have many teachers, and I say many teachers in my family, so I know the procedure, what they go through, plus working all this time with these people, so I know what it's like for their lesson plans and all the work they have to do. But in the mornings, I would come in at early, like 6:45 in the morning, and I'd get everything ready. I'd get the copy machine with the paper filled up, the ink was all taken care of, everything was all set to go. And then teachers would start arriving, and everybody's in a hurry because we got to get things done. It's a first period class. And invariably, the machine would misfeed. And it was, Anita, Anita, Anita. So finally, I put a sign right behind the machine. And I said, don't touch the machine, call Anita. It made it so much easier to just do it, because if you let them take it apart and try to pull the paper out, then you got twice as much problem. So
Liz Darling had one of those signs too.
yeah, well, she learned like I did, I'll tell you, because, you know, and I can't blame the teachers for any of that, but they're in a hurry and they do things in a hurry. And for good reason. So, but I appreciated every teacher that was down there. I worked with them for 26 years and loved every minute of it. I was always there if they needed somebody to just call on. I remember the librarian one time came charging into the office, and she said, oh, she says, I won't say his name, but she says, I can't get him out of the library. And she says, and he's not studying, not working on the library things. So I said, well, what do you mean? And she says, he's doing his homework. So I said, okay. So I went around and I went in. Of course, the principal's in his office doing his thing, and so I said, I'll go in. So I went in and I spoke to the student, and I said, you can't. I whispered to him. I wasn't going to embarrass him. I whispered to him, and I said, she asked you to leave the library, and I said, you have to go. He said, I didn't do anything. Of course, I could see a math book underneath a library book, or on top of a library book, so I knew what he was doing. And he says, I didn't do anything. And I said, I know you didn't, but she's the boss. She wants you to leave. You have to leave. And he just sat right there. Finally, I was getting upset, and I'm one of these that are, twice I'll tell you, the third time you better be moving. So I walked around the corner of his table and I said, you better get out of that chair or I'll pull you out. And he got right up and walked right out. And I looked at the library and I said, well, we got that one accomplished. But those are just little things. But you have to approach kids on their level. You're not the superior one. You're on their level. And I learned that from way back. And the kids used to say to me, you're just like my mother. Many times I was told, just like my mother. And I thought, thank God. Yeah, but it was a blessing to work there. It really was. And I do miss it very much.
Yeah, I think my days at Black River
Yeah.
were probably some of the best of my life so far. I really enjoyed it there, and like many of you have said, I was really sad when the school closed.
Yeah.
I'm a strong proponent of small school education, always have been, always will be. I think in a small school you become a family. A kiddo walks into your room in the morning, you know instantly something has happened, maybe at home the day before, the night before. You can sense these things because you know your kids so well. And I think in a big school, which I never taught in, but I would think that that type of recognition of issues for the child maybe, or that he maybe needs a little extra attention or someone to talk to, I don't think you'd pick up on those quite as easily.
I know when I used to, I have to write the admission slips every morning, and they had to have a note from home. And I had an envelope for every single kid. And because the principal said, let's save those notes. I said, okay. Well, after you do it for as many years as I did, you got to realize which parent wrote the note. And so one morning I had this boy and this girl come in, and they didn't come in together, but they were dating. And he came in and he had a dentist appointment and she had a doctor's appointment at the same time. So I was filing the notes and I kept looking at him, and I realized that this time the opposite parent had written the note. Okay. So I said, well, if somebody was absent, I had to call and find out what it was, usually. And like I say, a small school, you can do that. So I called the parents, and of course, they knew nothing about it. And so I went back, and I went to the classroom. I spoke to them, and I said, you can hang on to that blue slip to be excused if you want, but I said, you won't be excused. I said, because I contacted your parents. And they both looked at me, and and that was it. But those are little things that secretaries have to do to just carry on normal days.
Keep things running smoothly.
And we had good kids. For the most part.
Yeah.
I mean, the problems we had at Black River, teachers in L.A. and Boston and Chicago would laugh at them. I mean, our problems was somebody was late to class or somebody skipped school. You know, we did very rarely had a major problem.
Yeah. And thank God we had really no problems with drugs. That was the best thing I remember from way back. I know it's not that way now, but way back.
And I think kids at Black River got a good education.
Oh, yeah.
I often would say to parents who were questioning, you know, whether my child should go there or not, that I wouldn't have sent my own children there if I didn't feel it wasn't a top-rate education. And when I think back on a lot of students I have, how many today, for example, have PhDs, the types of careers they're working in, you know, it makes you feel maybe as a teacher you had some help in getting them there, helping them achieve their goals. But I always thought educationally it was an excellent school, and of course in athletics,
Well,
Black River was really well
If we're
known.
finished,
For those of us
I just want to
involved in
tell everyone
sports,
that the next segment
fielded
is
some
going
really
to
good
be
teams over the
quite
years.
different from some
Okay, well,
sweet
thank you
old
for
friendship
participating
old
in Chapter
ladies.
2. I think we'll have one more
You're going to hear a
chapter
lot
from
about
some teachers who
sports
couldn't
because
make it
every
here
one of them,
today.
I think, is a coach.
And then eventually this will
or,
be edited, put up in the museum, and hopefully
participating
people
in
will come and watch
heading
it.
up sports
And
and
maybe
so
we
forth.
can even
And they have
include
some
something
great
with
stories to
students
tell.
someday to add
So
to
we
it.
hope you
So,
enjoyed our section, and I
Thank
know
you,
you'll
guys.
enjoy the next
Thank you.
one.
Thank you. It was fun.